Hello and welcome. Well, there's no doubt that Christmas 2020 this year will look and feel a bit different. Amongst many of these changes, many families may experience financial challenges due to the effects of COVID, which may put undue stress and pressure on a heap of Aussie families. So to show our support and help ignite a little added Christmas spirit, we're going to share today some tips for a healthy Christmas spread that won't blow out the budget, with a selection of helpful tips and supportive messages for the festive season, with our special guest, Nicola Moore, Clinical Manager and Dietitian at LifeShape Clinic. Now, Nicola has been a dietitian since 1992, and she's works in a private practice and consulted to the private hospital in Rockhampton, and overall she's worked with them for 18 years. Thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
I'm well, thank you for having me, Rachel.
You know, a big part of celebrating the festive season, as we know, is with friends and family, and it's all around food and entertaining, and the celebration of Christmas. But the costs of doing this, on top of course, buying presents and of course, with children as well, this can all sort of add up and sort of take a bit of a hit to the hip pocket. And let's face it, you know, this year Australia is in the middle of a recession, and we do have to find creative ways just to be resourceful and to ensure that we can just afford to enjoy Christmas this year. So I'd just love to know, what are your thoughts on this overall?
Oh, the first thing is, you're right, it is a totally different year. Whether families can still come together is another question. And, you know, the financial impacts that a lot of families have faced with regards to their employment, either scaled back or being, stood down. So it is my motivation was talking about how can we still experience and enjoy this time of the year, but just with some sensible considerations around, our plan for what we're going to eat and also our budget.
Yes. And I read that the Australian National Retailers Association estimates that more than $30 billion, which is an incredible amount a year, is spent just in the 4 weeks alone leading up to Christmas, which really is an incredible amount of money, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. When I read that, it blew my mind, and and especially, as you said, this current climate, that we are really watching our pennies. So how can we still enjoy this time, but maybe just in a bit of a different way?
Yes. And do you think that in order to do this in particular for this year, as you just mentioned, do you think that planning is key to ensure that we don't sort of blow out the budget for this time of year at all?
Oh, absolutely. As I always say to my clients, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So it all does come back to planning, and planning has got to be front and centre of everything we do. And it's when we don't have a plan, that's when things start to fall over quite quickly, and we will blow the budget, and we'll take in and bring in more food than we need. And I always say to I hear my clients say in January after Christmas, I just ate too much, or I bought too much. So, it's not a surprise that Christmas is coming up. So the more that we can put a plan in place, we can just, enter that with a bit of a better plan.
I totally agree with you. And I say this every year. It's an interesting thing that Christmas is the same date every year, the 25th of December, as we know, but yet we still every year get surprised by it. I don't know what it is. Every year we're like, oh, all of a sudden it's Christmas. It's come around so quickly, which we know, and it does, but it is something that it doesn't, the date doesn't change. It's still the 25th of December every year. So if you know that something's coming up, as you just said, sort of work smart and not harder, and just plan. Now, I wanted to acknowledge that we had published an article of yours, and the title of that is Tips for a Healthy Christmas Spread That Won't Blow Out the Budget. Now, for someone who hasn't read the article yet, can you please tell us what it's about, and of course, what inspired you to write it?
Again, the inspiration was about helping people through this challenging time with, living under the COVID umbrella that we are doing. And I always talk to my client, and interestingly enough, you and I, having this talk on the 4th of November, the day after Melbourne Cup, and I always say to my clients, just like you were saying, Christmas Day isn't a surprise. Get ready the day after Melbourne Cup Day. And, just interesting that we're having this conversation today because it's a date that we all know about. And, Christmas is still 6 weeks away, but if we can start putting that planning in place, it can just take a bit of pressure off when we do come towards Christmas. And come January, you're not going to have a lot of, minimise your debts, I suppose, minimise that credit card bill.
Yes. Now, there's lots of information in your article that I want to dissect and sort of pass on as knowledge to be able to help sort of our listeners. But I'd just love to know overall, from an overarching perspective, just to begin with, what are your top tips for creating a healthy Christmas feast on a budget overall?
Yes, I've got a couple that I wanted to share with everyone, and the first one is exactly what we've already touched upon, which is putting a plan together and thinking about each weekend, just what does the next week look like, or what does the next couple of weeks look like? What events are on? What will they involve? Do you actually need to attend every event, and in what capacity? Can you just drop in and say hi and then just keep going? And if you're hosting something, how many people, how many guests, how many visitors are coming, and just being realistic about what you're going to put together. So from that, creating a list, a shopping list, looking at what you've got in your pantry, looking at what you've got in your fridge, and then, going shopping. With regards to going shopping, and I know it sounds really simple, don't go shopping when you're hungry, because that's when people can start to do a bit of impulse buying and get caught up a little bit on the specials or things that perhaps may not have been on their list. They start to get caught up in that. Yes. So the first one is sticking to your plan, making a plan and sticking to it.
So much can be achieved from taking the time just to think ahead and plan ahead. So I'm hearing what you're saying, to do a bit of planning each weekend for the week ahead is something, and time well spent, and to be realistic about catering. As an Italian and coming from an Italian families, we're never realistic about that at all. We always over prepare and then over sort of, there's always this ridiculous amount of food available. And for many Italian families, I'm sure they would agree, it comes to Christmas time and you just don't have enough fridge space. There's just not enough space anywhere. So we don't sort of do that and be realistic about that very well, but definitely we'll take a leaf out of your book.
Absolutely.
And to set a budget and to write a list is something you just mentioned. So no doubt shopping online can help track this. Now, so of course we're talking about shopping in two aspects. So talking about buying food, but also, shopping online with buying presents as well for this time of year. Shopping online is something that can help us track what we've spent and sticking to a budget, and only sort of buying what we need. Because when you're in store, of course, you always end up sort of buying bits and pieces that you hadn't planned for, which makes it quite easy to sort of blow out the budget. So, and another thing as well, following the supermarket catalogues for specials and to stock up on non-perishable items. Things like potato chips and soft drinks for entertaining are always great to get on special. You don't want to necessarily be buying those things with a premium and full margin and full wax. If you can get them on special, buy them, put them away, which I'm sure a lot of people do anyway, but these things can help. But of course, you can always buy meats and put them into the freezer as well, because we're not that far away from Christmas.
Absolutely. So you're right. Online shopping, helps just with not being exposed to everything and the end of the aisles, specials that just weren't on your list, but suddenly you think, oh, that's a good deal, and you put in. But definitely checking, all the specials that are coming up, because if they're things that are non-perishable, as you were saying, you can put them in the pantry. You can keep an eye out for meats as well and pop them into the freezer. Also, just keeping an eye, though, on specials. Like, for example, you're making a comment about chips, and you might think, you know what, I only wanted one packet of chips, and that packet of chips might be, say, $3. Or hang on, there's a special, there's 2 packets for $5. And it's coming back to, hang on, what was my plan? Was it 2 packets of chips or was it 1 packet of chips? Because if it was only 1 packet of chips, keep it just at 1, because otherwise you're buying something extra that you didn't really want and it's costing you an extra $2. So, don't get caught up in the specials if they're not on your list.
Yes. And I totally agree with what you said before too. The worst thing you can do is go shopping hungry. We've all done it and come home with bags and bags of food that we're unlikely to eat and didn't plan to buy in the first place. And it's a really expensive thing to do as well. So if you're running around Christmas shopping, the best thing to do is to always ensure that you've actually got maybe some fruit or muesli bar or a bag of nuts in your bag just to help. So make sure there's some food in your tummy, because we've all done that, and you get home and you're like, what did I just buy? Like I've just
Exactly.
and
And it sounds so simple.
yeah,
And making a list sounds so simple. It's interesting. I was making a list when my son, this is going back a number of years, and I was doing the shopping list, and he looked at me and he said, Mum, does everyone make a shopping list? And I said, actually, they don't. And he said, well, how would they know what to buy? And I thought that was a really, I think he was maybe 10 or 11 at the time. And I thought that is just such a simple statement. If you haven't got your list, how would you know? What would you know? What do you know to buy? What do you know to buy?
yeah,
So keeping a list, not shopping hungry, looking at alternative ways of shopping. If you do think that you're not strong enough, you're going to get influenced by all the specials. So online shopping is really, a great way of doing it as well. Yeah, and it keeps, if there's some considerations about, public safety, it's just another way that you can just keep away from people as well.
good point. Good point. And, coming down to, I guess, budgeting as well, this time of year, of course, we've still got utility bills, with, mortgages. And of course, people don't stop having birthdays and babies being born at this time of year. So there's always other things just on top of Christmas that we need to be planning and budgeting for as well. So this is something that we need to always keep in mind, because there's nothing worse than getting through to January and having a big credit card bill and then having to sort of
Absolutely.
pay off, and then having bills that are overdue and those types of things. So
Yeah,
understanding, this year's is going to be different. So let's maybe talk through some other points that can sort of help families as well.
definitely.
COVID overall, COVID's given us, I guess, the luxury of time to be home more, and we are cooking more than ever, which is wonderful.
There's another point.
Yeah, so undoubtedly we can save money when we home make foods ourselves instead of splurging out on luxury store-bought sort of food items that we can give as gifts. And everyone loves homemade gifts, don't we? Edible gifts.
Absolutely.
So I'd love to know, do you have any favorites that you can maybe share with us that we can sort of make and give as gifts to save some money?
Oh, absolutely. So, if someone's coming over to your place, there's nothing nicer than if you can make your own platter. And it could have lots of different colours in it. One of the things that I always say to my clients is, don't let brown, yellow and white foods just dominate what you're eating. We want to have colours. So what I mean by brown, yellow and white at Christmas time, putting out nuts and chips and cheese and crackers and chocolate, whilst they may be lovely, they don't add a lot of colour. Whereas if we can start to put out some lovely fruits, some berries, even make some homemade dips, straight away it's just adding some more colour. So we want colour in our life. So, making some lovely platters is a nice way. And I'm sure that, if you turned up to one of your families or friends' place with a lovely platter and it wasn't requested, I'm sure that they won't turn you away. It always will be eaten. So doing something like that's always nice. You can even do things like homemade salads, homemade dips, those type of things. They're very easy to make, and again, you can make them to how you like to have them. As you were mentioning, you could even make some homemade cookies in the shape of Christmas trees. So there's a lot of different things, and again, as you pointed out right at the beginning, all of this takes a bit of time. So the more that we know about things in advance and we can put this plan in place, it just takes a bit of pressure off, come 24th, 25th of December.
Yeah. And there is an endless amount of edible gifts, as you were just saying, that you can give friends and family, that you can dress up, like, for example, in an inexpensive jar, things like you can make jams, relishes,
Absolutely.
sauces, even like oils, chili oils. I even saw something the other day, flavored honeys, and people making homemade tomato sauce. So you can go all out with this sort of, there's endless amount of stuff that you can make, and people love things that are homemade, that sort of comes from the heart, and it saves money.
COVID's made people a bit more creative as well. So, definitely all of those things, and they also, some of those gifts you just can't buy. They're very special when someone makes something
100%.
for you, and they're things that are very practical, as you were saying, with regards to jams or chutneys. You can use them on Christmas Day as well.
Very nice. And then of course you've got all your sweet stuff too. You've got your gourmet cookies and rum balls and gingerbread cookies and things like that. I've even in the last few years made small portions of my nana's traditional Christmas pudding as a gift also. So there's, you know, endless amount of things that you can to be resourceful and creative, to be able to save some money and to be able to give gifts. It's not always about, of course, sort of going out and having to buy something. People really love that sort of stuff. And then
Absolutely.
on top of this sort of stuff, do you have any other inspirational tips that can help us save money around entertaining? Also, you've mentioned things, for example, like making our own dips is a good one.
Definitely.
Maybe, I mean, seafood is obviously something here in Australia that we love to be able to sort of splurge on at Christmas. But this year, a lot of families may just not just have that extra money to be able to have a seafood platter. So you can maybe sort of replace it with something like a roast or veggies. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a gourmet feast, does it?
No, it doesn't. And also I think, you know, thinking about, as you know, as we were saying, what does Christmas look like? Maybe instead of putting a lot of the money into those befores and afters, maybe, you know, pooling that money into just having, you know, instead of having all those befores and after, putting the money into getting some prawns, or looking at some of the other roasts or meats that you can use instead. So again, you know, if turkeys are on special, grabbing that beforehand, so that you could use something like that. Also, if it is seafood that you want to do, instead of going to just the shops to get it, maybe going down to the trawlers if you can, and buying it straight off the trawler is another way that can save a little bit of money as well. So, you know, it's again just having that plan.
Yes. And then, I mean, bulking up on more fruit and vegetables as well is a cost-effective way, and obviously better for sort of just the calories as well. and
Well, I was
buying.
going to mention that as well. Yeah, and that's where those colours are so important, like I was referring to before. You know, you don't want to just be having all those brown, yellow and white foods, whereas if you can have lots of seasonal fruit and vegetables and lots of salad, straight away you're getting a lot of bulk on your plate, and it does keep the calories down. It also keeps us full, gives us fibre, all those type of things. So,
All the good
and,
stuff.
you know, you can go to local markets and buy, you know, fresh produce that way as well.
And of course, there's nothing still wrong with canned and frozen foods as well.
Not at all.
They're low cost and low calorie
Absolutely.
and high in
Yeah,
nutrition, because a lot of the frozen stuff is sort of snap frozen. So, you know, you can be
absolutely.
resourceful and find some, obviously there's endless amount of recipes using all of these ingredients. You just need to have a bit of planning. Like you just said, it's all about the
Yeah,
planning. Yeah.
absolutely. And even if you don't use them at Christmas time, they're not going to go off like your fresh produce is. So something like that, you know, you will use into the future time as well.
And for those with big families as well, do you have any tips to help keep sort of costs down and keep it a little bit more fair as well?
Yeah. Definitely, you know, even just doing something like, if it is a family coming over, you know, giving people jobs of what or food that they can bring, so that it just shares the cost
To
around.
bring your own
Um,
plate?
Yeah, bring your own plate. So it might be, you know, asking someone to bring the meat, and some people to do, some of the other family members to bring the vegetables and the fruit. So just divvying it out that way. Another way that a lot of families do it is just put a certain amount of money into a pool and then just navigate it out that way, so that the cost is shared rather than being, I suppose, lumped on one person.
Yeah, so BYO your own plate. And with regards to sort of alcohol as well, for parents, if you're wanting to provide, I guess, some celebrations or the drinks and that sort of as well, to make a big budget friendly punch with lots of soft drinks, I guess you
Absolutely.
bought on sale in the lead up
Yeah,
to Christmas.
definitely. That's a good one. It's an interesting story happened to me a number of years ago, in that, and I refused to go Christmas shopping on, or food shopping on Christmas Eve. It's just one of my pet hates. So I'd allocated one afternoon to go grocery shopping to get everything. It was at my place and all the big ticket items had been bought. And I got to the shop and realised I didn't have my credit card. I'd left it actually in another city. I'd left it down the Gold Coast and I
Oh,
was up in
well.
Brisbane. So I had $100 in my purse. My son, who was with me, had $10. And what we did was we made it work on $110, and we bought everything. And again, what we did was sorry, my screen's just gone off. I'm just putting it back on. What we did was we just kept to our list, and we went around and we really thought about what we did need. And for example, like we were talking about before, nuts were on our list, and I thought, okay, I really can't buy the 3 big bags of nuts that I was going to buy. So I bought 3 smaller bags of nuts, and I just had to really make deliberate decisions like that, and we actually got it done. The other good thing about that was, come Christmas Day, we had very little leftovers because I didn't buy extra food. So it's a story I tell a lot of my clients. No wastage. And at one stage, again, my dad said, Nicola, the nuts are finished. Have you got some more? And I didn't have any of those, but I had some of another type. And as I said, by the end of the day, everything was finished. And that's, again, something that I hear a lot of times. People go, we just bought too much. We got impulse buying, we got caught up in it all, and then I've got too much left over. I bought things just in case someone dropped over, and it's then they're eating it just because to get rid of it. So again, really coming back to your plan, keep to your list is the biggest thing. That will really be a cost-effective but a fun Christmas still.
Yeah. As you said, it's really great to sort of not to waste the food and to sort of have that lens of sustainability for this time of year, as we always should have it. But this is something that saves time, money, and it's good for the environment as well. Now,
another one that a lot of clients that we talk about is like the ham. And it's always been that tradition, to buy the big ham. And then I think after Christmas, people get sick of, what can I do with ham? I've had enough ham. I've had enough toasted ham and cheese sandwiches. I've had enough omelettes. I've had enough of ham. So it might be even looking at, and it might be a little bit more expensive to do this per kilo, but it might be just going to the butcher and getting some Christmas ham cut for you, just the amount that you need. So whilst it might be more per kilo, you're actually not going to spend as much as compared to buying a half a ham or a whole ham, and then it's just less space in your fridge as well. So just like that and especially as families change, as we were saying, we may not have the same numbers of family members attending Christmas Day. So really just thinking, what do I actually need?
Yes. And looking at sort of decorating the table as well, Christmas bonbons can also cost quite a bit. And I guess with the lens of sort of making things ourselves, we can always make them homemade to save some money as well, and which would be fun, I think, as well. And
absolutely. I've never made them, but I'm sure we could.
And looking ahead at gifts and those types of things as well. I guess you and the kids can also make handmade Christmas decorations as a gift. Everybody loves handmade sort of gifts as well, to put them on the tree, like even decorating and painting pasta to make little angels and all those types of things that you can do. Once again, it's people aren't going to be expecting, I think, a great deal this year, and I think more so than anything, as we have, unfortunately, with COVID, I mean, depending on what state and territory that you've been in, but lost a little bit of that human connection this year, these types of homemade gifts are going to sort of, I think everybody, as you always do, love them, but I think in this year in particular would love them a little bit more.
It just makes it a bit more personal, doesn't it? And someone's taken a bit of thought rather than just going to the shop and buying things. So again, if we leave this to the last moment, it just doesn't happen. So the more we can do things in advance, Christmas can look, a very different Christmas, but it can still be very enjoyable.
And do you have any other tips to help keep the budget low, I guess, for table decorations? For example, in the article, you mentioned you can use what plants you already have in your garden, like rosemary twigs. That would just be a beautiful scent right throughout the table, to have rosemary twigs or cinnamon sticks, pine cones and candles, those types of things. As opposed to going out and splurging and getting new stuff to decorate the table, use what you've already got in the garden.
Absolutely. All of those things that you've just mentioned are great, and they're things that are just lying around as well. So it's being creative and getting the kids involved as well. And again, the more we can do things in advance, we can just put a lot more effort into that, and it's still very cost effective.
And I just wanted to revisit what you mentioned briefly before about the Christmas wishing well, that can
Yes.
sort of help keep costs down. Can you maybe just elaborate again what that is as a new concept? Maybe.
So typically, if you know that there's 3 or 4 families together and you've worked out what as a family you want to have on Christmas Day, and you've worked out how much that's going to cost, then just divvy it up the costs, and you put in, it might be, you all put in $50 each, and there's 4 families, so there's $200, or it might be a little bit more. So and then someone takes on that responsibility, or you then can farm out the buying of the food to people as well, so that everyone can be involved. So it's then just a way of not having one person, have the cost of maybe the meats compared to someone who's had the cost of the salad and vegetables, and that's just making it a little bit more equitable.
Great idea. And this has hopefully been a very helpful conversation for everyone watching and listening. I'd love just to know from your perspective, what are your key messages that you want sort of anyone watching and listening to take away today?
Take some time, really think about what you want Christmas to look like this year. Involve people, and as you said, involve the family, so there's that human connection as well. And it's very, I know that whenever my kids make things, the family members always comment, well, how good it looks, in the grandparents, and it just makes it very special. Think about quality rather than quantity. Don't get caught up in the emotion at all. Make a list, make a plan, stick to your list. Look for specials, but just think about how much you actually really do need, so that you don't get left with leftovers. Also, as you were alluding to before, Christmas can be a really high-risk time of the year, not only what we're talking about with financial implications, but also with weight. And it's not unusual for people to put on anywhere between 1 to 3 kilos over that period of time. So, the people that I talk about to clients, it's always about trying to maintain, and also engaging different activities on Christmas Day. So it might be, some family backyard cricket, or going for a walk. So that can be just another part of what Christmas is. So keep it simple, keep a plan, keep to plan.
Yes. Well, look, if anyone's got any other key messages, I guess for you on this particular topic, given that's your area of expertise as well, whereabouts can they find you?
Well, you can just jump on our website, which is lifeshape.com.au, or where I'm located is up in our Brisbane office, and our phone number here is 0733 777 888.
Wonderful. Nicola, I've really loved chatting with you. Thank you so much for your time. And I don't know if it's too early to say, but I'm going to say it anyway. Merry Christmas. There you go. You're the first person that I've said Merry Christmas
to you, and Merry Christmas to all the viewers.
And here's to a bigger, better 2021 for everyone. And I think
everyone's hoping and praying for that.
So bring it on. All right. Thank you so much for your tips today. It's been wonderful chatting with you. Take care and stay safe.
No troubles.
Okay.
Cheers. Thank you.
Okay. Bye.